Hello and welcome to the Jeff Fishing Vlog. This week, I'm going to deliver on the promise I made a couple weeks ago. We're going to learn how to tie a few knots. I've done a little research on it, and I've got 3 knots for you. There's plenty of knots, and the more knots you know how to use and understand the right situation when to use them, the better off you're going to be. But when I was young and I was learning how to fish, my dad had taught me the fisherman's knot. And when I started asking about other knots, he wasn't really that big into learning all these different knots. And, he felt like the fisherman's knot got him through just about every fishing situation. And I've just ran into situations to where I feel like there's better choices, because back then they were pretty much just fishing monofilament. There wasn't really, I don't know of anybody that was using fluorocarbon. I don't know of anybody that, this is the early 80s and into the late 80s. Nobody was really using braided line. That stuff didn't become popular until much later, probably the mid to late 90s. So the fisherman's knot was fine for that. And the fisherman's knot, even though there's better knots to use, a lot of times I'll just use the fisherman's knot to put the first lap of line onto my reel. But I also, in doing my research for this, I'd also found another little trick that I will be using going forward, and that is taking a piece of tape and taping that knot onto that reel, which, it's going to just help everything lay flatter. And then you're also not going to run into the problem of is when you got that line on there, of you're reeling it and it's not actually wanting to pick it up. It's not wanting to go onto the spool. Your spool's wanting to spin without getting line on it. So we're going to go ahead and give you that tip right off the bat. If you're redoing your spools, just take and throw a little piece of tape on there onto the spool right over the knot. Your knot should not be getting caught up with any of the other line, causing bad laps in that way. And it'll also wrap up a little faster with a little less hassle. The other thing is when I talk about this BTF, this best time to fish, I ain't playing, man. When I get the fishing fever, I want to be out there almost every day. And it gets hard to watch any TV shows. It gets hard to read these magazines and these books. And, I want to be on the lake. And I've got it now, and I've got it pretty bad. I went fishing, my first night off, we went to Dale Lake and we done a little night fishing. It was not very productive. We caught a few bluegill, ended up throwing them all back. Got a few decent hits on the catfish rods, but I'm not so sure they wasn't turtles. We had a turtle out there, and I don't know, just experience in my gut tells me it was turtles. And and it ended up being time to go, so we left. So then the next day, which was yesterday, I get up, it's not raining, I go to the river, I spend a couple hours out there fishing. And while I'm there, I could see backwater coming out of the creek. Dirty, muddy, full of a bunch of trash, picking up my tight lines. There was no shad. I'd had a cast net. I couldn't pick up any shad in the cast net. And after a couple hours and then seeing that backwater coming in, I was just really discouraged. Because not only did I see the backwater coming in, but I could see the river dropping in just a couple hours I was there. And in my experience, when the river is dropping, you're just going to be out of luck. That it's going to be, if you need to be out there fishing, go ahead and be out there fishing, because you never know. Sometimes one of my worst days fishing turned into, one of my best days I ever had on the water. I'll go ahead and tell you this little story. In 2005, the day after Thanksgiving, me and my Uncle Mike, I worked Thanksgiving. I was off the next day. Me and my Uncle Mike didn't have anything better to do. We wasn't going to go do no Black Friday shopping or anything like that. So we went down to the Ohio River, this little spot we like to fish. We sat there, had a fire going, sat there for several hours, most of the day, not catching hardly anything. And I take my one spinning reel, and I had a little jig head on it. And I just took it through a night crawler on it and just kind of cast it over to the side in some slack water and watched that thing sit. And as the sun was getting right over that line, it sat there for a half hour or more. We were talking, or I was off in my own world and watching these other rods we had. And then that rod started moving. I pick it up. I set the hook, and the fight was on, man. It was a really good fight. It was a good fish. I was fighting it with the sun in my eyes. I couldn't see it that well. I couldn't see the directions it was going. It jumped 3 or 4 times, and when I got it in, I thought it was a wiper. My Uncle Mike, he says, listen, I don't think that's a wiper. I don't think we know what that fish is. He said, when fish get so big, so much bigger than it normally gets, he said they just look different. And it turns out that was my 17.5-inch white bass, 3.5 pounds. And when I sent that in, when I entered the Fish of the Year contest for the Indiana DNR, I won the 2005 Fish of the Year award for the white bass with that fish on that slow day that nothing was happening, and we were just sitting out on the water because, what else were we going to do? That was just the thing to be doing that day. And so on these hard days, that just always comes back to mind that you never know when that fish of a lifetime is going to hit. And believe me, for my money, that was a fish of a lifetime. It was dumb luck, man. It wasn't anything that I'd done that was so creative. I didn't chase the fish. I didn't know that was like this white bass, this great spot for white bass, and we were going to just go there and catch this record fish, or, catch this great fish or whatever. It was just dumb luck. It was just that was the year I said before that we went like 100 times that year. We were just always on the water. And when you're always on the water, you just kind of get a different eye for things. And you kind of get a different feel for things. So that all being said, I'm going to go ahead and show you this little clip from just a few minutes of me being down, what I had to say when I was down at this little local lake the other day, and then we're going to tie some knots. Now, we are for real out here putting in some best time to fish. Some of that BTF time, because it is starting to pour down. We caught a few bluegill. Had to put the GoPro away. I didn't get a lot of good footage on it anyway. But, here we go. You can see it. I fished this lake in the rain a bunch of times. It'd be all right. My truck's just right over there. So, if we start seeing lightning, we're going to wrap it up and take off. But otherwise, it's just getting a little wet. We'll be all right. All right, I got 3 different lines out here. This is all the stuff that's commonly going to be used. So first of all, we got some Strand 17-pound tests. And this is going to be the Fisherman's knot. So, I'm going to take it and put it through the eyelet. Let's do it the other way. Just because. Now, I'm going to use my fingers. I'm going to hold it just like that. I'm going to take this hand, and this is just how I always do it. And when I'm good and practiced up, I can just about do this in the dark. I could just about do it with my eyes closed. So, I'm going to wrap it around. We're shooting for 7 times. Just lucky number 7. I think some people just do it 5 times. We're going to call that 7. Now, I don't know how well you can see it. We're going to put that not through the eyelet, but right there. Then we're going to take that tag end, and we're going to just stick it right back through here. Now, anytime you're messing with mono line and these type of knots, you see that right there, you're going to definitely want to wet this. And if you're a real fisherman, you're going to just spit on your line, and that's just the way it's going to be. So now we want to pull all that stuff tight without hooking into my hand. All right. That line don't look too burnt up. That don't look perfect there, so we're going to take and pinch that down, pull that tight. Normally I have like fingernail clippers, but this is what I got. And I just like to leave a little bit of a tag in, maybe just a little less than that. There you go. That's your Fisherman's knot. All right, now what I got here is some braided line. It's really popular. People really like to use this. I really only use braided line for flipping and pitching. That's just because I'm wanting a good solid hook set right at that moment and just, almost flip the fish right into the boat. So we're going to put the tag line through the eyelet. We're going to give ourselves plenty of line to work with. We're going to come back through the eyelet. Okay. Now we're going to make an overhand knot. Then we're going to take that part, and this is really important, easy, and bring it back over the bait here. See? Bring it back over the bait, and we're going to just pull this. Don't be careful not getting want all that to come in together. Let's see. Ta-da. There we go. Whenever you're making these knots, you tend to want to leave a little bit of tag, but just a little bit. And when it comes to this braided line, you really need to have the right type of equipment to cut it. A lot of times, toenail clippers just aren't going to work. You're going to have scissors or something specifically to cut that. Now that brings us to fluorocarbon and my last knot here, which is the Fisherman's 2 knot. Now, one of the big advantages to fluorocarbon is this does not reflect light. So when it is in the water, it is virtually invisible. It doesn't refract light. It puts off no color whatsoever. It doesn't have much give, and it sinks. So that's a lot of the reason people use it for a leader. So like if you're Carolina rigging, maybe you want to use fluorocarbon because that's going to help that bait sink. It's not going to help it rise. And then it's going to give that bait a more natural look versus using mono, because if you've got light getting down to where you're fishing, then your mono line will be visible to some extent. And if a fish is fairly spooky, if it's prone to be spooked, then your line can spook because of your line. So, all that being said, this is a nice stiff line here. It's very strong. And just for a 14-pound test, that's not really that high a tensile strength. Okay, so we're going to take the tag in, put it through the eyelet. Now this is a Fisherman's 2 knot. So we're going to take the tag in and put it back through the eyelet. And this is in a similar way. This is going to give us 2 loops around our eyelet here, very similar to the Palomar knot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this down here. I don't work with fluorocarbon very often. And now we're going to just go ahead. We got our big loop there. You see what I'm doing here? I've got that pinched. So we've got our loop there. And we're going to just go around this 7 times, just like a regular fisherman's knot. This stuff, if you run your line with nothing but fluorocarbon, it is liable to give you, it gave me issues with, on my spinning reel. I just wasn't able to do it. I basically had to just use it for a leader. Okay, let's make sure we're going through both of those. Stuff doesn't reflect light, man. You can't hardly see it. See? Now we're going to go ahead and wet this stuff down. We do not want any burn marks. Your knot is the most important, we're going to call it equipment, most important task that you have whenever you're fishing. It is more important than a sharp hook, and that is saying something, because this has to hold or else you will not catch any fish. If that breaks, you're not going to catch any. And that knot just came out beautiful, man. I don't know how well y'all can see that. But that is the kind of knot that I want to tie like every single time. So we're going to take and clip that off. You know, when we leave a little bit of tagline there, which that can get caught up in weeds or that sort of thing. But just in case, when this thing is under a lot of pressure, you know, you want to leave yourself just a little bit, just in case, you know, to give your knot a chance to catch back up, to hold. Right there we go. Man, Fisherman's 2 knot, Fisherman's knot, Palomar knot. There's a lot more knots to learn, but we're not going to learn any more knots today. All right, welcome to the giveaway portion of the Jeff Fishing blog. Now, have you used these power baits yet? Oh my God, no wonder you don't ever catch any fish. Now, like, we go to Christeny Lake, like, really, who's the best fisherman at Christeny Lake?
Me.
Are you sure about that?
Me.
I think you just outfished me that one time.
What?
Was it 2 times or was it 1 time? Or was it like 4 times?
It was like 4.
I have a hard time believing that. That just don't sound right. So, what are we giving away here? Power bait?
Yeah.
Shad? Green pumpkin? Do you even know about green pumpkin? Man, you got to learn these fishing colors. They're amazing, okay? Watermelon, green pumpkin, all that good stuff. So, we've got the names in the hat of the people that shared the Facebook post or commented on the video, right? Did you watch the video?
Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah.
Who caught more fish? Was it me or Dane? Did I break your little head? Can you not count that high?
I forgot.
All right, Riley. Go ahead and pull a name out of the hat for the winner of this power bait right here. And who is the name?
Kimberly Wilson.
Congratulations, Kim.